In a few hours from now, the month of March will come to an end, and with that also the first quarter of 2025, and it will not go down in history as a very strong quarter, because if we're looking here at the quarterly returns, and this one is then for BTC, you can see that we have a minus right now of 12.5%, and I don't think there's a whole lot's going to change in the last 12 hours of the month and of the quarter. And if we also then compare that to other cycles, so the last year of the cycles that we know for BTC, so in this case 2021, you can see that we had a 100% return on the first quarter, and if we then go back again 4 years, you can see almost 12%. So a minus of 12% is pretty bad, one of the worst quarters we had in all of the cycles since the existence of BTC. And don't even get me started about ETH, because ETH so far is reporting minus 46%, and that's by any measurement very bad. Also here, of course, if we go back 4 years ago, you can see 160%, and here it was more than 500%. Now, these are average returns, so there is some hope and there is some good news in all of these red numbers, and that is that if you're going to compare this with average returns, let's say we're then looking at the stock market, you're saying, okay, the stock market, so the S&P 500 does approximately 8, 9 or 10% a year, taking a long-term average, a couple of decades. So since we do not have a couple of decades, but this is all the info that we have about crypto and the alts, you can also say, well, since we are lagging now on the average return, it is very likely that you need an outperformance on one of the future months or quarters to come. And I think that we are much closer by than you might realize. I know that doesn't feel like this right now, but what you're feeling is sentiment, and this can flip very fast. Here quickly the monthly return, just to give you an overview before we go into the charts, and I'm going to give you some trading setups. Of course, January wasn't even that bad for BTC, plus 9%. February was pretty bad, minus 17%, and March actually is not that bad, minus 3%. But I know that the sentiment, it feels very bad. And then of course, if you compare this to other years, this was the bull market year. That was an always double-digit performance, and also here it was not the strongest, but you can see one good month, just 1 month here, February, makes up for 2 losing months here in a quarter. If we then quickly look at the monthly performance of ETH, okay, here then now this quarter was terrible. The one of the cycle before was really good, and here 2017 also every month was green. Now let's quickly go to the chart, because if you're just looking here at the BTC chart, then you're saying, well, actually it's not all too bad. We're not crashing down. We have not backtested any highs, any major support here. So actually it doesn't look all too bad. It's just that the alts are not moving. ETH is lagging, ETH is dumping, and therefore it's just also an underperformance in the altcoin market. But other than that, like I said, we had last month then a minus of 17, this month minus of quote-unquote only 3%. Is it really that bad? I think actually you can take that with a grain of salt. And also if I'm looking here at Mark Cipher B on a monthly, this still actually looks very good. Now I'm not saying that the bottom is in. I think that it might still take some time. Also if I look here on the weekly, we just closed the week. This does not look like we are going to clip anytime soon. We also have an inward curve here on the VWAP. Money flow is still lower, so this doesn't look all too strong yet, so you might still have a few more weeks of a little bit sideways action, and eventually slowly we're rolling over, and then we have a bottom somewhere here. But so far I'm not thinking that mega crash coming in the day soon, but we also have to be honest that the bottom is not in anytime soon. The indicator is just telling us that most of the time frames are still pointing downwards, so we should expect some more pressure to the downside. If I'm looking at ETH, and then we're really going to look at some of these trading setups, I am having a hard time believing that the high is in. We had a almost perfect double top here on the monthly. You can see here this was March and this was in December, and now we're coming down, and we did not even take out the previous all-time high, which I also find very weird, because there have been tremendous buying of institutions on the ETH coin and the network and everything that touches, breathes and walks and touched ETH. So I'm still thinking that this can go much higher, and we can have a quick turnaround. The reason why I'm saying is that yes, last month for example we had a minus 33%, but it can quickly turn around, because look at this month, this was a plus of 46%. This was a plus of 47%, and here you have a plus of 43%. So it maybe look very bearish because we now have 4 months in a row that it goes down, but you can see that the turnaround can happen very fast, and you can have a couple of dozen percentage to the upside. I think before you know it, then you're trading at 2.5 and then quickly at 3,000. Before you know it, you're back here at these highs at 4,000. So don't disregard ETH here. Like I said, I think the bottom can be in much faster than you think. Might take still a couple of days or weeks, but eventually I think the move to the upside can be very fast and will catch a lot of people by surprise. Okay, then some of the trading setups. This is what I've been looking at actually since last week. Matter of fact, let's go here to the 4 hour, and that is something that I've also shared with the community in the Discord. By the way, if you want to join that, it's completely for free. Click on the link in the description and you can join completely for free. In purple you can see that we have this rising wedge. We are breaking out. There's no back test. The follow through is somewhat slow compared to what actually should happen. Usually on these patterns you see a relatively fast break to the downside and the target would also be reached very fast. That doesn't happen. If we take that out of the equation, so that rising wedge here, then I was actually waiting for a short here from the point of control. Also that was given in Discord. That is at and around 90k. The reason was also because we have these highs right here and they look very much unfinished. You have this very slow grinding structure to the downside. The only nice thing that I can what I found at the time at these highs was that it had multiple touch points going back all the way from the all-time high. So you can see that right here. This was a nice touch point. This was a nice one. Here we have one, and then of course you have these highs where it just grinded against. But I was actually hoping for a move to the upside, grabbing that liquidity from the early shorts, hitting that point of control, and then to go to the downside. Of course that didn't happen, so no short from the top. So that's a little bit unfortunate. Other than that, actually, I'm not all too bearish because at the end of the day, we are just trading in a range, and that's also where you see the volume profile. Yes, we're trading underneath the point of control. You can see this huge increase here on the volume, so that's going to be a hard one to reclaim and eventually go higher. But on the other hand, does it make sense to become super bearish at the bottom of a range? I don't think it is. Matter of fact, I have a couple of long setups just underneath this level, which I shared with the group in Discord. If you want to know them, then feel free to join. But other than that, I'm actually not too bearish. And you know what could happen? That we just zigzag here for a couple more days or even weeks. With that being said, if I'm just looking at some of the time frames, I have to be honest, it's all over the place. So for most of the trades, I am treating them as scalps with the possibility of leaving a runner, but I'm not thinking that I will going to hit the home run anytime soon. Why? Well, for example, you have here the 4 hour. Yes, it is clipping, but the money flow is actually still in the red. Matter of fact, it is now at the lower point than it was here. Not all too strong. If I then look, for example, on the daily, this one says we are not bottoming out anytime soon. Money flow is still in the red. VWAP lower, momentum wave lower, RSI is lower. This doesn't look like it wants to clip anytime soon. But then, for example, if I look at the 1 hour, this also looks like it wants to commit suicide. And where did I see it? I think it was maybe the 8 hour. Yeah, actually here the 8 hour. Whoops, let me first take this out real quick, if else it becomes a mess. This 8 hour actually doesn't look all too bad, and also the VWAP is curving to the upside. RSI is unfortunately a split, but actually this looks like it wants some relief. So bottom line here is that most of the time frames are a little bit all over the place, so it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to aim now for a big home run. If we eventually take out one of these levels, and I already stated in the Discord a couple times that I'm not liking the way this is set up, so most likely we're going to take them out. But if we're taking them out, reclaiming them, and then eventually go higher, that could be a very nice long trade, whatever low it then is, because the way we came down is just a very slow grinding structure. There was barely any, whoops, what am I clicking on today? There was barely any good back test of any of this. I mean, here you have a very shallow one, and then eventually we're just dumping down. And this was the weekend price section, so I'm not even going to look at this. But what we're leaving behind is just this trail of liquidity above all of these highs. So if there is, for whatever reason, some kind of news event, I think that the bears can be caught with their pants down, is if you do something like this and then eventually you get a squeeze to the upside, and this can go very, very fast, because you could have short here, 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 and not once would you have been tapped out at all. So that is very, very unusual. So I think with the idea of longing the bottom, is there a reason to go higher? Yes, we have liquidity above. Yes, we have unfinished highs. Yes, the majority is short AF. I think this could be a great opportunity to look for a long with the possibility of keeping it a runner, and therefore I am not bearish at all. I'm not saying that April is going to be great. Matter of fact, I think on the macro April still might be shaking, but I think especially on May and June we can see some absolute fireworks, but I will create a separate video regarding that. That will be it for now. That will be it for today's update. If you like the content, please do me a favor, like, subscribe, click on the bell, click on all so you don't miss anything. Thank you guys so much. See you next one. Bye bye.